All right. Looks like we are live. Are you good on your side?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning. Good morning, Mark. I'm glad to see you. Glad you're doing all right. All your limbs and your mentals are intact.
So we good. We got them all.
We are two brothers talking because we're two brothers and we tend to talk. We're excited to come to you this Saturday morning too. We are in two different locations, as anybody who decides to watch, an hour later can see. But we were determined to get online and to do our thing, for the benefit of anybody who gets blessed by it. So y'all bear with us with any technical challenges, but I think we're all set at this point. Today's topic that we're going to be talking about is titled "Beyond Charisma: The Real Cure for Male Isolation." So it's a real topic. There is a very apparent epidemic that shows up in a lot of ways. Today with men. I don't even think this is like a U.S. only thing. I think this is a global thing that people are going through, and overall, something worth us discussing, and hopefully through that conversation we'll impart some we'll acknowledge the things one, and then impart some tools out there that hopefully will bless somebody. I guess, Mark, on your side, a couple of things to mention. You got in your background, we're just going to do this organically. In your background, can you tell a little bit about what that is on the wall before we get started?
Okay, so in the background you'll see EST33, which is our clothing brand. It's focused on Kingdom of God. It's a Christian clothing brand. So if you get a chance, go to est33clothing.com. Check us out. Yeah, here's some of the hats, and I actually have one of the hood sweatshirts now, talking about the Kingdom of God. So that's what that's all about.
Excellent, excellent. And what was the website again, Mark?
est33clothing.com. And the EST is a date. That's the day Jesus lived for 33 years. So EST33 is actually a date.
Perfect. Perfect. Excellent. I just felt like since this particular time you happen to be in front of that signage, like that was destined for us to mention it. So I just felt it appropriate to stop and highlight that. So hopefully you didn't mind that. But I think you guys, if you haven't been to that website, you haven't checked out the mission, not just the clothing, the mission. You should. It's a blessing for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just kind of going back to the topic again, beyond charisma, the real cure for male isolation. As a matter of fact, here I will have that on as a ticker kind of or banner at the bottom. So if somebody joins, midway, you kind of know what we're talking about. So we'll try to keep the subject matter, focused on that particular topic. We talked about a lot of things, over the last, let's call it, 4 months that we've been doing this, give or take, and some of those things are touching on isolation, but we've never really like dug into it and dug into what men really experience around, like that feeling of being alone, or maybe like that comes in a lot of forms, like not being recognized, not being acknowledged. Like all of those things are centered around isolation and feeling alone. So the goal here is to kind of talk about, how does that look like and show up in the form of like performance pressure, how maybe sometimes men, we're idolized or we're kind of followed because we are charismatic, and that charisma and that confidence sometimes is misleading.
Yep.
And we should talk about that some. So maybe what we'll do, like normal, we'll define a couple of these things so that we all know what we're talking about, because sometimes we can use one word and we all think about that word in a different sense. So Mark, how would you define like charisma in this context?
Yeah. So first, I would start off by saying, great topic. Whenever you show me the topics, I'm like, oh man, it always makes me think. I always have to like process what we're talking about. So you do a great job with the topics. I want to start off by saying that. When I think charisma, I just think about that person who has that natural. I don't want to for it. They have that it factor. You just naturally attract people. You connect on a superficial level. You connect with people very easily. People are attracted to you. People, like to be around you. very personable. So that's kind of what I think about when I think charisma. Like you just had this natural connection with people, not on a deep level, but more on a surface level, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. I kind of I agree with that definition. And then there's another part of it that is interesting. I feel like charisma sometimes, like you said, it people can connect to you. I actually think charisma, it just creates an orbit. It doesn't create a connection at all.
Okay.
Like I think it's the image of a connection. It's almost like saying all of the planets in the universe are connected. No, they're not. They're just in orbit of one another. Like it just creates this orbit. There's nobody on Mars talking to anybody on Earth. Like it's just, there's no connectedness at all, but it gives the appearance of connection and the illusion of connection. And I think that's what we some of us look at, when we see other people that have that charisma, we think that they are connected and there's no way they could possibly feel alone, or isolated. And I think you can be highly charismatic and create an orbit around you, and people want to be around you, and you want people to be around you in that context, and still go to bed at night very, very isolated.
Gotcha. So you make people feel connected, although there might not really be a deep connection at all.
Yeah, I think it's like it's almost like to continue that orbit analogy, it's almost like the warmth of the sun. It's kind of, you have this, you do create this heat, and others may benefit from that heat, but it's not that you're connected to it.
Yeah.
It's more like that. Like I don't think that those who connect through their charisma alone are actually connected to anything. But sometimes for a charismatic man, that's the best we got.
Yeah.
Because we feel isolated, and we use that charisma to connect to people. Also, I think sometimes we're not as charismatic as we think, and we are as funny as we think, or as interesting as we think. And we use those things to try to connect to people. And we're not self-aware enough, but we want to be connected so bad, and we don't know any other way, that we use those things and we push them on people. And it's like I'm funny, right? I'm funny, right? Like, you want to be around me, right? And it's just like, man, it's you don't realize that you're actually pushing people away. You're detracting from your connectedness by only leaning on your charisma.
And I can as you're talking, I can think of how that can happen, because you see your career, like once you recognize you have charisma, you can overuse it, and other people can see, oh, this seems kind of fake, or it seems like it's too much, and you don't necessarily realize it within yourself. So I could definitely see where it can become a negative really fast if you're not have that self-awareness, as you mentioned a second ago.
Right. Yeah, it feels like, man, it's so easy to do. It's so easy to do, because I was thinking about, as we were planning around this topic, I was looking at some statistics that are out there, and just to take it to the extreme. We won't stay here, but I want to illustrate how serious this topic is. About 86% of men surveyed in a 10,000 man survey in the US, 86% of them thought that their identity was provision. It was like being a provider. And 78% of those men, when things got tough, they didn't act on it, but not all of them acted on it, but 78%, 77 and some change, was like 77.4% of those men had actually had some type of thought of isolation, and in the most extreme circumstances, a subset of them had thoughts of suicide.
Right.
Because they weren't valuable.
Yeah.
They didn't feel valued. They felt lonely. They felt ignored, and on an island. So just to touch on that for a minute, like I think it's important for us, and as we talk about it, and for anybody watching to know, like in its worst scenario, there are real outcomes to this topic. This isn't like some warm, fuzzy, feely topic. This is real. There's a lot of men who are kind of like I won't even say suffering in silence, like they're just operating in isolation. And they might not be being silent, they just might not know how to communicate in the way that gets heard by those around them and how to connect. So just just to tie that into something tangible, it's real, and it shows up on how we father and parent. It shows up on how our brotherhood shows up. It reflects in our friendships. It reflects in how we treat our spouses, and it reflects in what types of sons and brothers we are to our siblings and
Yeah.
cousins, and what kind of employees we are too, and leaders. It shows up everywhere. Like a really isolated man who leans on his charisma for the illusion of connectedness is a very I guess kind of easy man to shake. You know what I mean? Like things, because he's not really connected to anything, especially if he doesn't know God. Like he doesn't have a connectedness to any type of like rock. You know what I mean? Which in our case, our belief system is Christian. So like for us is God, is Jesus. But for others, it might be something else. Like if they don't have that now you're really on a buoy. You're just you're just doing this to the waves of the ocean. Like whatever life throws at you, you have nothing to connect to. And I think that charisma can give you the illusion that those people are not buoys, but when they close the door, they're getting whipsawed all around. Like they don't feel good.
Well, our whole society is kind of built on a person's ability to attract others, to create an influence.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real substance behind it. There's no real like roots, no connection. So for that person who can create, who has influence, who can attract people, get people to watch, to listen, but there's no real connections there. That's a very miserable person, because there's no substance, there's no foundation, no nothing real. Because I think God's created us with this need for a connection with other people and connection with Him.
Mm-hmm.
Don't really have the foundation is shaky. You've created a system where you are alone because you don't really connect with people on a deeper level. So even though people are around you, you really are still alone, at the heart of the matter,
Right. When circumstances call for that, when your connectedness gets tested, let's put it that way, real simple. Like when your need for being connected gets tested, that's when it shows out, right? Like that loneliness and that isolation shows up because you got nothing to lean on. Which then, if you just play that out full cycle, then that means like, okay, well then man up, right? Like man up, do it yourself, like work more, do more, like think more. And that's not always the solution. Matter of fact, that's typically not the solution. But that's the only solution we know, going back to the statistic in that survey, because 86% of men, and by the way, that 86% of men was matched with 82% of women. Women were surveyed in the same survey. They both set to those survey results. They identify men as providers, number one. So in a time where things are more expensive, political climate's high, the macroeconomics don't work for most,
Right.
especially people. Let's be just real straight, especially for people that look like us. So more than others. But I'd say everybody's at a disadvantage at this point if you're not in the top 2%. So then it's like, well, what do you do? What do you do at that point? Because there's not a whole lot of this this encouragement for connection out there. Matter of fact, like you said something a moment ago that really caught my attention, the influencer age. Like we literally have a term that people get paid for called influencers on social media, which is the definition of informing and influencing without connecting. Right. And that's not, it doesn't make it wrong. It just means that there's still something missing that we can't lean on influencers for. We have to go get that connection, somewhere else. So maybe that's like a good lead in to what does connection really mean, right? What does being connected really mean? We just talked about, how like how charisma can at times be used, or confidence can be a facade for connection. And it's not even, maybe just one clarifying point, and I would love to hear your reaction to this. I would say that most using it as a facade don't know they're using it as a facade. I don't think it's men being malicious, and I hope that women that hear this don't take it that way. Like that's not men trying to trick you that they're confident when they're really not. I think they're trying to we're trying to convince ourselves half the time. Like we're trying to actually get ourselves through it. It's not a game. Like it's just really our coping mechanism. But would you agree with that, or do you have a different perspective?
No, I would totally agree with that. Like sometimes people don't even know that they're putting up a facade. Well, let me say this. I think sometimes we don't know, but I think if when you really sit down and think about it, you know, even if you can't necessarily define it, you know something's off about how you're presenting yourself. Like, yes, on the outside, you know, man, when I step in the room, people, their eyes are on me. I can attract people. Like people love to be around me, but I think on the inside, you will know that there's an emptiness or something's missing. However, you know, you may not understand it completely, but I think to some degree, people understand that within themselves.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. And maybe that's where the connectedness comes in, because if you're around the right people and you're really connected, just the one person that loves you enough or cares about you and wants you to win, you know, like that's important. They want you to win, even if it costs them. They want you to win. They will tell you. They will tell you, hey, like you don't have to keep trying so hard. Like it's, you know, you're enough, and we are connected, and I got you. And like, you know, what do you need? How are you today? You you're pushing, feel like you're pushing this on me. Like you don't have to do that. I know you're already, a good earner, a good provider. I know you're already funny. I know you're already confident. Whatever that thing is, you feel like they need. Us being able to give them that connectedness and that support while also being really honest with them. And I don't think I would venture to say most men don't have that for two reasons. One, for the reason we're talking about, we don't know how to connect sometimes, which we're about to pivot to. The second reason is deep down, most of us we want the goodness that comes with connection, but we
Right.
don't want the uncomfortable that comes with connection,
Yeah.
which means when Marc is down, Burrell's got to come in and support. Like that's what connected means. You know, like chains, a chain link, you know, is only as good as the chain link on both sides of it. Like that's what strength looks like. And you got to be there, and you got to be accountable for it. And if you don't feel like it, doesn't really matter. That's what connected means.
Yeah.
You know, we don't wake up one morning and decide we don't feel like being a dad or a husband today. Like that's not in the cards. And it goes the same way with I really don't feel like being a brother today, tomorrow. That's not in the cards. I can acknowledge what I'm going through with you. But at the same time, if you're in need and I'm positioned to address that need, you know, then I should consider doing that seriously. Like that should be, I should feel accountable for that, to show my connection to you in that way.
So you're kind of touching on it. You kind of already established it, but like if you were to summarize, how will you recognize if you have true connection? There's that connectedness in your life. How would you recognize that?
Yep. So that's a good pivot. So I think for me, the answer is, you know, one, do I feel that I have someone who I can solicit feedback or ask for feedback from or input from that will be really candid with me. And I assess that candor by my level of comfort when I get that feedback. If I talk to you about 10 really important topics over 6 months, and otherwise we're just kind of shooting the breeze, like we're just talking, you know, hey, what's going on, man? Like, hey, how you doing? Y'all good? You know, you want to come over, watch a game? Blah. Like all those interactions are important. But if in between those interactions, I talk to you about 10 important topics, right? So in those important topics over 6 months, you don't tell me anything that makes me uncomfortable.
Right.
This is not for everybody. I'm gonna disclaim that. But for me, I do reflect. Each time I reflect on the last several points of feedback that you gave me or input you gave me to see, like, was I ever uncomfortable? Then if the answer is no, the first thing I do is I make sure you have a license to make me uncomfortable.
Okay.
Like, hey man, don't just tell me what I want to hear. Like, tell me what you really think. If you got another opinion, I want to hear it. Like, your opinion is not just important. Frankly, you owe me that because we're brothers. Like, the brotherhood demands that you give me that opinion, and I'm gonna give it to you too. So, like, help me by being maybe a little, transparent. And then if I still don't get it, I might not be as connected as I think, which is no one's fault. It just is important to know, right? Because the last thing you want, imagine this, because I want to turn that question back to you. So while you think about your answer to that question, imagine this illustration. I am on you know what a bungee cord is, right? Like bungee jumping. So people bungee jump, right? Most of those people, let's just say it would be me. It would not be me and you, more like. So so I'll just put that out there. So but anyway, so people bungee jump. I'm definitely afraid of heights anyway, and there's too many other ways to die.
Uh-huh.
So folks will bungee jump, and you will connect that cord. Imagine if you had 10 cords connected,
Okay.
but you couldn't see them. You were just told they were connected. Would you jump?
Hmm.
Probably not. And I don't think most people would. I don't care who you are, old, young, red, yellow, green. Like, it doesn't matter. Man, woman. Most people will not jump, and that to me is a very interesting parallel to people being connected but trying to go through hard things in life. Like you didn't trust and verify that you were connected.
Right.
So, and it wasn't important enough for you to do in the moment because either you just assumed you were being lazy, it was uncomfortable, whatever the reasons are. We all got our excuses, and we all fall short of doing that too, by the way. And nobody does it perfect. So then now the hard time comes, and you got to jump, or it's time to take a risk. Like, you want to get out there and do something.
Right.
You want to start a podcast. Like you and I both know, we went and got some feedback from people around us, and all that feedback wasn't positive. Not even like when we came up with the idea and when we started. And we still solicit that feedback. We might solicit that feedback actually now more than we did before because we know the value of that feedback, even especially when it's uncomfortable. So to round out that analogy, I want to make sure I trust and verify those hooks are in, because when I jump, I want all those connections to be real. So I never hit the ground, right? If I do touch the ground, I touch it with so much grace that it's just a tap and I'm coming right back up, because the rebound of that is coming from a place of connectedness and love and care. And like, I'm right back on top. Like that to me is what I think like a good illustration would be of how you know you're connected and maybe how you know you're not.
I love the 2 points you made. You talk about first permission, which I do give people permission for that connectedness. I mean, you can tell people, you can tell me anything, or give me your thoughts, your feedback. But if your response says you're not really listening, or you immediately go to a defensive mode when somebody gives you that feedback, you're actually telling them you don't want it, and there's no real connectedness.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing you talked about is trust. I think on the flip side of it, the person has to trust you to be connected to you. If there's no trust connection, then you're not going to jump out there and just open up, or whatever you do when you're connected, you're not going to do that because you don't trust the connection. So I love the permission and the trust. I think are definitely two important pieces to the pot, because without that, you'll never establish the connection that you need. We all need it, but you won't try because you don't trust it.
Right.
What I realized about myself is I'm an introvert, but I'm only an introvert because I'm definitely an introvert.
What? Breaking news.
But it's breaking this for myself. The more I understand myself, because it's like I'm an introvert because I don't like to pretend.
Yeah.
In an environment where I have to put on a show, man, I don't do well because it's hard for me to go to that place on a continual basis. It's draining.
Mhm.
So if I trust the environment, I'm a clown. If I don't trust,
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm going to isolate and I'm going to kind of stay to myself. So I think when you can trust that connection, then it gives you the freedom to be transparent and just to
That's
exist.
right.
Without that, we're hiding. We're in isolation. Isolation for me is like I'm not gonna show you everything.
Mhm.
I'm protecting myself from you. I'm protecting myself from the connection because there's something about it I don't trust. Um, and when I have friendships where I feel like a person can be transparent, I don't
Mhm.
break the friendship, but it's just like you can't go deep. You just kind of become surface level because there's no trust there. So yeah, trust and I forget the first one.
License.
License, permission. Yep,
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah. So when you said that, you made me think about like a dynamic within those two frameworks you just described that I think is really common. So especially amongst friends who were or even siblings and cousins who really grew up around each other when as kids and teenagers, and if sports were involved, and that's this like all of us are guilty of doing it where we kind of either like old school we call it playing the dozens, like today we would just call it giving each other crap, like when we do that with each other. I think there's some bonding that happens in that, but also there is a state of that that's really toxic,
Yeah, yeah,
and it discourages connection, and it encourages isolation. And the person typically doing that, who's making comments that are hurtful, that they think are funny or interesting, or they think makes them look charismatic and cool, that that kind of behavior is really common. We've all done it to each other. We've also all been the recipient of it, and it doesn't feel good when you're the recipient. If you're self-aware enough, you feel like an idiot afterwards when you recognize you did it to someone, and it's just not cool, and it doesn't encourage that connection too. So I think just calling that out, like it, I don't think we outgrow that. Like I've seen 60 and 70-year-old men do that to younger men, to each other, and I think it's a learned coping mechanism for sure. Like it's not I don't think it's like intentionally malicious most of the time, but when you're grown, it doesn't matter what your intent is as much as it matters what your impact is. So your impact is you're being a jerk and you're making people feel bad, and you wonder why people don't want to be around you, why they stop responding to you, they don't return your phone calls, they don't engage with you in other forums. Well, that's why, because you don't recognize it and you don't want to admit it, but you're being a jerk and you're not being somebody who is encouraging connection. So when you do that out of love, which most of us are very uncomfortable with because it's vulnerability. When you do it out of love and you connect out of love, you do away with all those trivial things. Like it's that childlike behavior that we have to let go of sometimes. And man, I'm 46, and even to this day, like I catch myself sometimes. I might say something. I might even say something to one of my own kids who are now, my youngest is 19, so like my oldest two, they're in their 20s, and my oldest son, he's over 25. So like I see he's my son. I also see him as an adult, right? And I treat him like that. But sometimes I'll catch myself, like I might make a comment to him that he doesn't appreciate,
yeah.
and fortunately he loves me enough, and he
Same.
learned the tools as he got older. He learned the tools to tell me that, and I was like, oh wow. And that's and this, I had to really one, like not get defensive. I had to reflect on it, and I never want to hurt his feelings. Like I want to encourage him and push him. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that and use hurting him to do that. Like those things don't go together.
Yeah.
Discomfort is not the same as intentional pain, right? Like it's not the same thing. So I share that vulnerable story to one, give anybody who sees this now or later an example of the level of vulnerability that's required, because that made me feel vulnerable just saying it out loud. And it didn't necessarily feel good to say it out loud, but I'm hoping that example, even though it's small, like that example was big to me and him.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope that helps somebody recognize that you might be doing that. You might, men, we might do that to our spouses. We might, me and my spouse, we learned that the hard way with each other, making comments, and like, she's very competitive, and she's more competitive than I am, to be honest with you. Like, from a sports background perspective, she was like a superb athlete in high school and college, and she basically, will be like super competitive with me, and there are things we learned we just shouldn't do together, because she's, she might actually throw something at me. So it's gonna get real. But like, being aware of those things helps you to learn like how to connect and how not to disrupt your connection with those types of negative things. Does that make sense?
It does, because I think what you're saying is or something I was hearing was like that responsibility that comes with connectedness. As the person on both sides, your son responsibility to communicate when, this doesn't help our relationship, or this hurts, or this frustrates me. Just like you have a responsibility to receive that and to respond. So even if somebody is doing something in this relationship that may not be intentional, but is hurtful or frustrating or whatever, both people, if there's true connectedness, both people have the freedom and the permission to communicate that to the other person.
Right.
I love the example you gave, because that's definitely a part of Black culture, is the, kind of going at one another.
Mm-hmm.
But the hard part about it is, if you take a vulnerable side of me, or you take information about me and you make it a joke, or you make light of it, not realizing it, you kind of destroy my want to connect with you, because I might not trust the connection anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we all have a responsibility in relationships to protect the other person, to protect the connectedness. And so, yeah, it's something we all struggle with it on different levels. I might not go at you, but I'm gonna laugh, which is just, it's not any better. At the end of the day, it's all the same. So now you touched on a lot of good points.
And to round up that last point you just made, ooh, man, that hit home like hard. I might laugh. Just, sometimes that laughter comes from a place of wanting to connect with who's involved, not because you think it's funny.
Yeah.
And the person who put that out there initially thinks that they receive that as, oh, it is funny. So you've confirmed it by laughing to continue that behavior.
Yeah.
And I guess, alternatively speaking, the license to put out there that I think you and I are trying to communicate, and we'll pivot to the latter part of this, is like, you are accountable not to laugh, and you're accountable if you so chose, and you're also accountable to give the feedback to that individual. You don't have to do it in front of everybody. Like, this is not about blasting people, but you are accountable if you're connected really and you love that person. You are accountable to give them that feedback. Like, hey man, don't make those kinds of comments about him no more. That's not helpful. That doesn't come across as good. That's why I didn't laugh at it.
Yep.
And I love you enough to tell you that. So like, don't do that. And that's real hard to do. We're saying it right now, not in the heat of a situation, and acknowledging that it is difficult, but it is necessary to create true connectedness, and for us to be real brothers with each other. And if you see somebody doing that, even if you don't know them, like there is this little bit of account, especially if they're younger than you, like there's just a little bit of accountability if you're in the right situation to just impart that feedback. And you can do that without being a jerk. Like, you can do that without being abrasive. You can do it where it comes off out of love. I'm not encouraging anybody to put themselves in like mortal danger, but like I'm just saying, I think you could do that. But I found that when I built up the courage to do that in some instances, it worked out way better than I thought it would. And all I needed was a little bit of faith, that mustard seed faith, and the courage to just maybe say something, to my son's friends or to other people I don't know. If I hear some boys going at each other, I might say something that provokes laughter, but in that laughter, there's a seed of like, y'all shouldn't do that to each other. Like it doesn't have to be, hey, stop that. Like you don't have to daddy them. We're brothers. We're not father and son to everybody. So like as brothers, we're gonna tell each other stuff that can come off, in a brotherly tone, not what's the word I'm looking for, more like demeaning, maybe. Maybe it doesn't have to be demeaning.
Yep.
So so then like kind of rounding us out, but maybe this is a good moment to pivot into like the virtual age we have today and some of the ways that men can get connected. So you usually round these out with like tools or suggestions that are tangible, because we want to make sure we're defining problems and we're talking about things, and we hope that as we talk about them, like they touch somebody. But at the same time, we also want to make sure we give you ways to deal with these things. And we hope, others, particularly women, maybe understand how their man or their son, could feel, or their dad even could feel isolated, and how they could deal with that. So Mark, what would you say, like from a tooling perspective, and maybe even if this is hitting on some things we talked about already, that's great too. What are some of the tools that men can use to, one, recognize that they are disconnected, and then two, how to deal with that, isolation?
Yeah, I think reflection is a good place to start. I'm gonna push this camera back a little bit. I don't think you're recognize all the things that we're talking about unless you kind of reflect for a little bit. So I think that's a good place to start. Like I got to sit down and think about the relationships that I have in my life, and then kind of think about, hey man, how do I treat my spouse? Does my spouse feels like a safe place to come to me and talk about anything? Do I feel like I can connect and communicate to my spouse anything? Let's go to my friendships with my kids, and my relationships with my brothers or sisters in Christ. Like, how you have to be honest with yourself. Like, am I a safe place for people to come to and to communicate frustrations, even with me, things they're going through in life? And you might have to ask that question, or you kind of look back on the relationship as a whole and think about how many meaningful conversations am I having, or is it all kind of superficial? So reflection is probably the first place where I would start.
Got it. So I guess that kind of answers, the how do you identify that you're isolated and maybe not connected, and then what are some ways you would suggest men get connected? What are ways? How about this? What are ways that you connect?
How do I connect? That's a good question, because I think I automatically know where my connections lie.
Mm.
Now I got to take a step back and think, okay, so how did I establish those connections? I think I established those connections over time and very slowly. So you kind of do a test run. Let me communicate this, and let's see how it goes. If it goes well, then I will continue to shoot information down that pipeline where that connection is. If it doesn't go well, then I'm probably gonna kind of like be more guarded as to how I communicate and what I communicate. So for me, I established a connection as I built trust. So where do I have, who in my life do I trust the most? And now let me take a step of faith and be vulnerable and kind of test that connection, if you will. That's how I've established it in my life. It's kind of over time and very slowly.
Yeah. And I think mine are similar. Probably the first thing that comes to mind is, or it's probably maybe two or three things that are real independent. So one is church. So if church is not part of your life, one way to get connected is to get involved in a church, and maybe even like if you're not a church person, just because that's the real thing. If you had a bad experience at a church, or kind of separate from a relationship with God, the church structure ain't for you. There are a lot of community type engagements that you can have outside of a church. So establishing some connections centered around serving, I think is a great way to get connected. So if that's to be specific, if that's like volunteering at a soup kitchen, where they feed the homeless, if that's volunteering for Habitat for Humanity or volunteering at a SPCA because you're into animals and dogs, like whatever that is, people of similar interests will be there, and you'll have a way to get connected to people with a similar interest of you that was such an interest of you that it likely touches one of your values, which when you get connected, usually connection happens around values. Real connection happens around values, not just interest, right? So I'm interested in, I don't know, playing video games. Well, I might connect with people playing video games. It's all superficial. Like you're typically not going to have real connection with them, or when you need something, you can call them on the phone and they're there, right? Or when you're down, they recognize it proactively, so they do something for you. But if it's value centered, if that interest is value centered, then all of you love, saving dogs and cats. Well, then if y'all are all volunteered at the SPCA every month, well, you're going to build that relationship over time. And those people that last, your value systems are likely very, very aligned. So then you might actually build a connection with them and have an easier way to connect, centered on something that is core to who you are. Because when it's core to who you are, when y'all go through your rocky times, because every relationship has rockiness, then you won't give up. So it won't break. So I don't know what's your reaction to that?
No, I was gonna say church would probably be the last on my list.
Mm.
Here's another reason I said it is because there's the pressure of it actually intensifies the pressure to pretend, because which the understanding is we both have the same moral code. So if I'm struggling with my code, my moral code, if I have a flaw, if I'm in sin or whatever, I'm probably going to be less likely to communicate that to that particular person, just because, hey, we go to the same church. I don't want my business out at the church, or I'm afraid you might judge me. So actually, when I thought about the connections I appreciate the most in my life are with people who are not similar to me, or they're similar, but they're different. Where I know if I communicate something to you, you're not going to tell me what I want, what I already know, or what I. So I do agree with you that initial connection is going to be made with people who are similar, but my deepest connection comes with people who are similar, but they're almost, I don't want to say a counterpart, but it's just that there's a difference there, and I respect it enough to establish that connection with you. And I know I need what you see that I'm not able to see myself. So that was my only pushback with church. Is like, church is kind of like, if I tell this person this, they're gonna look at me in a negative light, and now I don't trust the relationship. I don't trust that connectedness.
Yeah, and that's where man, that was a good, such a good perspective, because I think like most people go to church to potentially look for connection with the people and then connection to God.
Okay.
And I think that's the difference in like how you create real connectedness. If your value has to come first. So if you have a value that says, and let's take the church context out. The value says, I believe that helping other families have a place to live is important. And I go volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, and I'm a consistent volunteer. Then my value comes first. If I meet Joe or Susie through that process, well, when I meet them, I'm never putting them over my value. My value, that value that keeps me going there, has to be ironclad. So then if the value's ironclad, and now I'll bring it back to church. If the value to go to church is for me to develop a relationship with God, not the pastor, not to be seen, not to connect with these people, but to connect with the value, then as my value holds, like my value is the anchor. And then anyone who's got similar anchors, they're not going to be similar to me. They just have that same value anchor. like you and I have a value anchor we have several value anchors that are very similar, but you and I are very different in how we operate, and we complement. And that's like the value we get brother to brother.
Right.
But to your point, I am not an introvert. As an example, you started the episode with that. I'm not an introvert,
Right.
and you are, and that's how we kind of feed off of each other, and that works, And so I agree with you. Like there has to be the way we think has to be complementary to have a real valuable connection. Or it doesn't have to be, but like it typically is complementary to have a real valuable connection. But so that's the difference in us. But the value that anchors us together is usually going to be a value that's very deep and core to who we are.
And I totally agree with you. And I think if I had to clarify what I was saying, I would say it this way. I think when it comes to church and instances where like we're very similar, I think the weeding out process is more work, because we naturally immediately connect when it comes to this, serving or, our belief in God. So like that naturally happens. So now I have to dig a little deeper to know if we're going to connect on a deeper level based on all this other stuff that is not.
Oh, I think there you go. You're back.
I just got a call, so it took my camera.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart. You good now?
I can't even hear you now.
Can you hear me now? How about now?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. So I'll round this out. So I think I heard that. I heard the last part of the thought. So totally makes sense. And I think just to round out, like the last tool that I would suggest, and then we'll close out. This right at the right time is one. I would just encourage anybody who hears this to really think about how what type of connections are you really comfortable with. Some people you might not want the burden, so to speak, and the benefit of real connection. So we're not saying like this is for everybody. But for those men that do feel isolated, do feel alone, want to feel connected, like the final tool I would impart to you is to reflect on your current connections today. A little bit of inventory, because you'll probably find that in that inventory there's 10 people that you would list as connections, but the reality is you may not actually be connected with more than one of them, and the rest of them are all peripheral. They're all surface level connections, like what Marc mentioned. So it's all surface, right? So I think that doing an inventory is a good starting point, and then you don't have to try to get connected to 1,000 people, but man, it's beneficial to be connected to at least one. And I would just encourage you to make that person, if from a male perspective, make that person another male. Like get a brother, and that's probably, it could be somebody you grew up with and you've been around a long time. It could be somebody you have a really, tart relationship with today. And the tartness of that relationship, it actually comes from a place of like what Marc said, where you're not the same, but you might have a value that's actually anchored together that would be beneficial for y'all to do something, and if you can figure out what that something is, that's probably the final step, is like decide what it is that you're trying to accomplish in your life, wherever you are in your life. Decide what that is, what's important to you. If that's to give back in the community some kind of way, if that's to start a podcast, if that's to do something that is interesting with your kids, like go start a soccer team, like whatever it is you're trying to do that's important, like write that down, and then think about your orbit. Who in that orbit could be a part of that with you? And then think about, like, even if they make you uncomfortable, maybe give that a test. See if they can be part of that with you. It might have been the match that you wouldn't have thought about, but sometimes that's where God bless you, and that's that connectedness that you need You need somebody that can be that ride or die, or you need somebody that can give you, some straight feedback, and that you can give feedback to and just be there for one another. There's varying degrees of connection. It's not like black and white, but that connection is not going to be with someone who, not always going to be with someone who you thought it would. So just be open to that. So hopefully those couple of reflection, giving the license to to those who you want to get connected with to give you feedback, and seeing if they will, basically kind of doing a assessment or inventory on those around you in your orbit to see like who could you build a better connection with. But it all starts with that reflection. Like, are you really connected? And don't just take the surface yes, because I bet if you went and asked the other person on the other side of that connection how they felt, you may feel very connected and they may feel totally disconnected. So like you both have to feel connected for it to be real. So Marc, any parting words?
No, that was good. And I love what you said about the varying degrees of connectedness. Because you could almost be like, oh man, I'm not connected to this person. I thought I was. This is a horrible relationship. No, there's varying degrees of connectedness. So, you can grow, like it's not a binary thing, 1, 0, it's like we can grow in our connectedness. So I think you made some great points.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we hope this blessed somebody. Hope y'all have a good Saturday. Beyond this, you're not going to get connected sitting at your house. So get up, get out and do something. And God bless you. We'll see y'all.